All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome. We're doing a little stream about some scenery management. Looks like Rob's in. Aqua Funkalistic Booty Wap, my favorite name on Twitch. How are you? Um, Rob, thanks for asking about this stuff. I just thought I'd do it once and record it. I didn't save it last time, so just thought I'd do it again, and then hopefully that'll answer most of your questions, and you'll know what's going on. So, if you have a question, uh, feel free to ask. I might defer it to a little bit later on because I might cover, what you might ask. I'm also in my Discord chat, or in the Discord voice channel. So if you want to talk to me and get tired of typing, you're more than welcome to join me there. All right, so let's just cover some basics here. X-Plane has Jet Pellet Cinnamon. Thank you, sir, for the cheer. Thanks for stopping by again. All right, so let's just cover some basics. I've got two screens here, so I'll just kind of try to keep this moving along and kind of get to the end here quickly. So this is my X-Plane folder, and on my system, I have XP11 installed on drive C or drive Charlie in my documents folder. So your folder paths and all of that stuff may vary depending upon your system and how you have it set up. But if you have something different, make the appropriate changes. So GP is going to be zonked out soon. Yep. Okay, cool. Very good. And Rob is here. Hey, great. Awesome. Okay, so I'll just kind of lay a little bit of groundwork, and this might be basic stuff, but you might already know this. The scenery from X-Plane is well, there's default scenery, and that comes from this global scenery folder. And depending on what you install, how much of the world do you install, the contents of this folder may vary depending on how much stuff you have installed. If you have just the demo area installed or have the demo, you're just going to have this, and you'll see that there's not as many folders in there, and each of these represent the DSF files represent a boundary of 1 degree of latitude, so east and west, by 1 degree of longitude. And the whole Earth is covered by these tiles that are 1 degree by 1 degree. And obviously they change in physical size depending on where it is on the Earth, but that really doesn't matter as far as scenery creation. So the default scenery comes from the global scenery folder, and then typically, like the stuff that you like an add-on airport and that sort of thing gets added into the let me just kind of close some of this stuff up here because I was messing with some stuff earlier. That stuff gets added into your custom scenery folder, and again, the contents of your custom scenery folder might vary depending on what custom scenery you've downloaded, what stuff you've added on. We just did a backcountry bush league flight yesterday, so for instance, here's Black Bridge, right? And I don't know, there might be a few other ones in here that hey, Skeet Jeffrey, thanks for the follow. Appreciate you coming by. So all of these folders in here are add-on scenery folders that you would download from xplane.org, or if maybe you bought some scenery, that stuff gets installed in here, and hopefully that's fairly straightforward. Now, let me jump to the whole deal with ortho scenery. So the way that X-Plane scenery works is quite a bit different than the way that if you're familiar with Flight Simulator or even P3D, it's a completely different thing. And what happens is, let me just, for those of you who like pictures, that's me. I don't know. Let's see. Let's do paint. Draw a picture. So essentially, what happens is you have a layer down here on the bottom that is what we call the mesh, and the mesh. It's an M for mesh. You can think of the mesh like if you take the whole Earth and cover it with this grid that defines like where the mountains are and how high how high the mountain is. So think about like taking a net and draping it over the terrain, and there's all these little vertices, and it has like how high these peaks are and how low things are and that sort of thing. So that defines the underlying base element of scenery. And then when you go up a level, think of it like this: you have overlays that sit on top of that, and overlays are things like roads, trees, um, power lines, so PL, like so the big high tension wires, things like that. So the overlays all get set on top of that, and also autogen scenery. Also, all of that stuff gets stacked on top of the mesh, and then that's what you see. And then one other layer on top of that then would be all of the custom scenery. So I'm just going to put CS here for custom scenery. And so the custom scenery lives on top of that, and the custom scenery would be things like the airports that you would download, like Blackbridge that we used last night, or any other thing that you could get from the explain.org or a scenery provider. So that's basically it in a nutshell. And with the Ortho for XP stuff, if you want to put Ortho scenery into Explain, what you're doing is you're manipulating this level, and you also have the ability to manipulate this level. So the mesh, and then also the overlay that sits on top of the mesh. So let me kind of jump into the Ortho for XP process, and we'll go from there. So to get, let me throw the browser over here. If we go to explain.org, and you can scroll down through the forums. Anyway, there's a forum called forums, and then Ortho explain.org sponsored projects, and then Ortho for XP. So I'm sitting in the Ortho for XP folder, and if you don't have Ortho for XP downloaded, here's where to get it. You can click on any of these things. A guy named Oscar was the guy that wrote it, and if you click on that, any of his posts have the links to the software down in his signature. So you can click on one of those. I would recommend, if you're on a Windows machine, I would go right here, the 1.3, and you can click there, and it takes you to a Google Drive. And obviously you can't preview it, but essentially you just download the file, and then you unpack it. Now here's another step that I kind of learned the hard way. And if you're starting out with Ortho scenery, just take this for what it's worth. Otherwise, you end up having to do a lot of file manipulation. And Rob, I think you kind of ran into some of this that quickly can become a headache. So on my system, again, I have a drive C. I have a drive C, and I also have a drive D. After I figured out that I was going to use Ortho scenery, my drive C quickly was filling up fast, and I'm like, well, I need to do something here fairly quickly and change how I'm doing this. So if you haven't started the process, or if you're very shortly into the process, you might want to think about doing something like this, and getting another hard drive to actually hold all of your Ortho scenery. I happen to pick up a 8 terabyte drive and just installed it, a spinning drive, installed it in my computer, so I have another drive, drive D or drive Delta. So if I go into drive D, you'll see that this folder right here is my install for Ortho 4XP. So when I would have downloaded this file from Oscar's Google Drive, I downloaded that and unpacked it, and I ended up with this folder. And the contents of that folder then will look something similar to this. You'll have a bunch of folders, and there are a lot of things, or a lot of utilities. Some folders are where data gets stored in the process of making the ortho stuff. So then the next thing that I would want to show you is, in order to run the software, if you go into this binary folder and then scroll down, you will find an executable file right there, ortho4xp _v130.exe. So you would double click on that, and that would start ortho4xp. I've made a shortcut of that and pinned it to my taskbar. So that's right down here, and so I can just click there at any time, and I don't have to navigate around and find that executable file. Again, do whatever you think might work for you. Let me back up to drive D here, and we'll just kind of put this out of the way, and I'll kind of walk you through some of the settings. This base folder field right here is where is the location, the drive location, and the folder of where Ortho4xp will actually store the scenery tiles that it makes. And this is part of the stuff that adds up real quickly. So you can see on my system, I've made it on drive D, and I've also called the folder Ortho Scenery. So you'll see that right here. So here's my Ortho4xp install, and then here's a folder that I created, and I just named it Ortho Scenery, and you can name it whatever you want, but that made sense to me. And that's pointed to by the contents of this field, and you can select that by clicking on the folder here, and it says, hey, where do you want to save this? So you could navigate around and tell it, like, save the files into here. So that's what that's for. And in fact, I've already screwed it up, and so let's put it back. Let's go to drive D and Ortho Scenery, select folder. So that's the first kind of fundamental thing that you need to set. Then the next thing that you need to do, double click my Ortho Scenery folder. Okay, that's from the chat. There it is. So there's miles and miles of folders here, and I have done most of the United States, quite a bit of British Columbia, and then also a good part of Alaska. So I think I don't even know how many, well, 1,200 items I have in this folder. There you go. And one more thing from the chat. How does response curve work on X-Plane? My yoke has a slight twitch in the center, and I want. That's a great question, but probably not appropriate for this stream. Shoot me something on my Discord, and I'll try to address that there. So that's what my Ortho Scenery folder looks like, and this is just the collection of tiles that I have made. All right, so let's go back to here. The main usage of this program, there's these buttons up here, and this is the config window. This lets you set up different zoom levels on a tile, and I'll explain this in a minute. The earth is a map of what tiles have been built. The hand stops any tasks that come along that you might have running. You say, hey, stop everything. I want to do something else. So that's how to stop a task that's going on. And the big blue button is the on and off button. That question was totally on topic. The response curve on X-Plane. No, I'm talking about that question was totally on topic. Okay. All right. Thanks. All right. So Rob says, so does it put it in Ortho4xp tiles folder like I have? I only have an Ortho4xp folder. Rob, I don't know the answer to that. It would depend on what this is set at. it's I'd be curious as to what your value you have in this particular field. This I was just going to show you like ultimately how I ended up setting it up, and it seems to work really well. So anyway, that this is how I've done it, and hopefully this will kind of give you clues as to how to do stuff. So let's just walk through these things. This is the settings screen, and anytime you make any change here, then hey, there's Rob. Hey, buddy, how are you? Oh, here you are. Push to talk. Okay, thanks. Okay, gotcha. So you probably have a different folder in here. Whoops, not here. In the ortho not in here. Sorry, in this one. You probably have a different folder in here then. Okay, great. Okay, so you can see I have some crumbs left over from some stuff that I've made before. Um, so if you okay, so if you have room on this drive, then that will totally work. Um, okay, so let me. I'm going to go ahead and keep going here. So the next thing, uh, well, let's go back to the settings stuff here. The settings, any change that you ever make on this page, before you leave it, you always need to hit apply. So if I wanted to change this value from 8 to 10, that that would not take effect unless I hit the apply button. If I came in here and I just if I'm going to put it back to 8, I'm going to hit apply. But if I change something on here and then I didn't hit apply and I just hit exit, it wouldn't save that change. So just keep that in mind that anytime you add a change on here, that you always need to hit the apply button. And these buttons down here, you can I don't know specifically. Let me keep going, Rob, and then we'll come back to specifics. Is that okay? Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. So you might need to come in here and hit the right app config, and that what that does is it saves most of these values to a configuration file that when the app starts up, like so. Let me go ahead and quit it, and I'll start it again. Um, that stuff sticks for me. That my where my scenery lives is stays there, and then these settings stay. Most of the settings stay on my system. For some reason, the value in here does not stay. Um, okay, so generally, Melvin Leroy and I have made a lot of scenery together, and we do a lot of stuff like bush airports and backcountry airfields and stuff. And these are the settings that we generally run to just to make the scenery generally work well. The things that you might want to check if you want to mimic my settings, I think the airport smoothing picks is important. Any of these values you can click on this and it'll tell you what that value does. And this is a bit of study and a bit of research. I don't know what every one of these do, but I know what some of them do. But you can after you kind of wrap your head around the process, you can experiment with different things if you're trying to achieve something specific. So airport smoothing picks, I generally have at 8. Everything else is set here. I think at default. Um, this is another one to kind of keep track of high zoom level airports. And I have this set for true. And what that does, here's the description, but what that does is if there's an airport that's defined in a certain latitude longitude tile, let's say let's say Minneapolis or whatever, it says here's where Minneapolis airport is. Um, Ortho for XP will go in and say, okay, anything around that airport, like typically on my settings. Now let me back up here just for a second. I generally build stuff at zoom level 16, and this is the magnification of and the sharpness of the zoom or the of the ortho imagery that is projected down. So at 16, I personally generally find this that works. It works pretty well. When you're below like 2,000 feet or something close to the ground, it starts to get a little blurry. But if you're above that, it looks fine. This value, again, is subject to your preferences. If you increase this, every time you increase this, it goes up exponentially. So if I'm on a zoom level 16, my tile's this, let's say my tile's this big. If I jump it to 17, it's going to take that same tile and make four more squares out of that. And then if I go even higher, it divides it even more. So the data set then just goes, it's an exponential curve. It gets a lot more, your storage requirements get to be a lot more. So on my system, I have it set for 16. So let me jump back here to the zoom level for airports. So if this is set for true, then what happens is if there's an airport boundary defined in a certain latitude, longitude tile, then around that airport, this far away, the extent in kilometers past the airport boundary. So for instance, 1 kilometer away from that airport boundary, it's going to increase the zoom level up to whatever value I have set in the zoom cover ZL. And so what this does is as you fly closer to an airport and lower to the ground, then automatically the scenery that gets built, the zoom level gets better. So the imagery becomes more sharp. That's what that process is. And again, you feel free to experiment with that. How much storage capacity you have may or may not dictate that. The only other thing I think that I have changed, use decal on terrain, and I have that set to true. And what that does is it takes another texture from X-Plane, and it takes the ortho imagery, and then it takes this other texture from X-Plane, and it overlays that on top of that, and it adds just another, just kind of like another. It's basically another texture on the satellite imagery. And so as you get closer to the ground, it's not just one big blurry mess, but it has a little bit more detail to it. So I generally like that. There's some people I've seen on the forums that don't, and so they set that to false. And again, you can experiment one way or the other as to what your preferences are. The next thing that I want to cover is this custom DEM, or digital elevation model. This field determines where Ortho4XP is going to get the data to define the height of the mesh. So again, it's this red layer down here. How accurate or how fine is the data that defines the mountaintops and the valleys and the peaks and that sort of thing. And so if you are in the United States, and if you're doing a tile that is completely within the United States, then there's no reason not to use this NED 1/3 arc second from USGS. If you're doing a tile that's actually on a boundary, and maybe a part of it is in Canada and part of it is in the United States, then you need to go with this 1 arc second, this one. But if you're doing something that's completely inside the United States, you can get away with 1/3 arc second. These other ones are just different sources, and depending on what part of the world you're building, you might want to switch that setting to something that's appropriate in whatever part of the world you're building. Most of the stuff that I've built has only been in the United States and Canada, and some in Mexico. So in my personal needs, I've always just kind of jumped between one of these two. The next thing down here that I would that I would point you to. Let me check the chat here real quick. Thanks for the custom dem hat. Yeah, yeah, there you go. Well, that as I've been learning, I'm like, oh, I should probably build something. So, or build this again. So I'm totally in the same boat as you are. The custom scenery directory is where your X-Plane custom scenery custom scenery used only for one-click creation or deletion of symbolic links from the Ortho 4XP tiles to there. All right, so what this does, and again, this is the way that I have mine set up. If Rob, if you have this thing blank, then it's going to create your ortho tiles in the tiles folder. Mine is set for ortho scenery folder, and so that's going to be one level back right here. And these are where things get created. And then basically what happens is you want to point this to your custom scenery folder. So on my system, it's C:users/Ralph, that's me, and then documents/X-Plane/custom scenery. And again, you can navigate to that just by clicking on that. And where that is on my system real quick, if you want to see it, I go to documents, I go to X-Plane, I go to custom scenery. So this is the folder then that you want to point that to. And what happens is then is you can use Ortho 4XP to link. You'll see all of these links down here to the different ortho tiles or things that I've created. All of these links are created and or deleted but managed by Ortho 4XP. So I never create any of these things. I never do anything manually with them. I let Ortho 4XP actually do all of that for me, and that's all defined by making sure that you have something, your appropriate custom scenery folder in this field. The next one down is where where Ortho 4XP is going to get the custom overlay scenery, or where what the source of that is. And again, if we go back to this picture again, remember the overlay stuff is this level, the green, and that's roads, trees, power lines. I forgot what A stands for, but it's all that stuff that autogen. So it's all of that stuff. Imagine the ortho tile sitting down here with the satellite imagery, and then the buildings, roads, power lines, and autogen all get set on top of that. So if nothing's defined there and it doesn't create an overlay for that particular tile, you'll just have satellite imagery and there'll be nothing on it. And so if you happen to see that, then you've got something going on with your overlay, with that overlay scenery. And this, let's go back to my settings here. This is the source of where it gets all of that information from. And for me, I know there's some tricks that you can play where you can get different overlay data sources, like from AL Pilot. I think he had created some more recent up-to-date stuff that was built off of newer OSM data. But for me, I've just used the default stuff that comes with X-Plane. And it's been okay. You know, a lot of times the roads are kind of clunky, or maybe they're not real as high resolution as you might want. But anyway, that's where this comes from. And I know, Rob, I know you had a question earlier in Discord where you were building certain tiles, and they came from. If I go into here, let's see, not custom scenery. If I go into global scenery, there's a few tiles in here that are part of the demo areas, and these files here are stuff that is included in the demo of X-Plane. And these tiles are not duplicated in the X-Plane global scenery. So if you're making any tiles that are within any of these regions, then you need to change this. Instead of being global scenery, you need to change that to X-Plane global scenery, and then you do demo areas, select folder, and it would look like that. And then you could cook those tiles right around Seattle, and then change it back to do the rest, to do the rest of the world. So I'm going to back up a level and put it back to global scenery and do this. Okay, got a question in the chat. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the overlay essentially tells Airplane where to auto generate. Yeah, that's exactly right. Ski Jeffrey, that's exactly right. That's where the custom overlay source, that's what that is. So the directory containing the sceneries with the overlays you would like to extract, you need to set the level of the directory just above the EarthNav data. So again, it would look like one of these. Ty Sees, thanks for the follow. Appreciate it. Thanks for coming by. And I think that's about all of the settings on here that I have manipulated. I think one time I messed with some water masks. If you get into like areas of the coastline where you want to see, like, so for instance, if you're doing the Caribbean and the water changes, like like it's this turquoise blue for a long way out until the water gets real deep, then you would want to adjust the water mask somewhere. I don't know where that's at, but that's something that you could experiment with. Just kind of look through here, but that's in there so that you can make that, you can see textures in the water. That might be a helpful thing to do. So again, anytime you make changes to here, always hit apply before you exit, and then they'll stick and they'll work. I'm going to skip this for right now because that's a little bit more of an advanced type of thing, but let me jump over to the world map. And what this does is it brings up, you might end up out here in the ocean, but I'm going to pan back over to the United States, and you can see these tiles loading in, and these represent all of the tiles that I've made. So they're still loading in, Here's British Columbia. And what it's doing is it's going through and reading what I've made before. And the what's on these tiles, it says BI 16. So that's Bing is the imagery source, and it's zoom level 16 is what that means. The ones that are dark green are all ones that have symbolic links into my Ortho for XP, or I'm sorry, they have symbolic links into my X-Plane custom scenery folder. So for instance, this one right here, if I double click on that guy, he turns yellow, and that's plus 29, minus 95. So positive 29 degrees latitude, and then longitude, it's minus 95 away from the prime meridian. And all of these tiles, all the tiles are always defined by the southeast corner of the tile. So that's always good to know too, because if you're wanting to do an airport, for instance, I'm kind of doing a sidebar here, but for instance, if we bring up Sky Vector, and here's the flight that we did last night, and the East Coast. Let's say we wanted to make Ayers or Sky Bryce, and we wanted to cook the tile like with these two airports on it. Well, I can look in here and I say, oh, well, here's 39 and here's 79. So 39 degrees latitude, 79 degrees longitude right here. And so these are just to the, just over a little bit to the east. So what I want to do is I want to find the tile. I want to find the southeast corner of what this is in. So if I go down, you'll notice right here, here's another latitude longitude boundary, and that's plus 38 minus 79. So let me zoom out one more here. So the tile boundaries would be this. And you can see that, like right down in here is a tile boundary. There's there's more information here, some right here. So that's what to look for. There's another one right here, but we always go with the southeast corner. That's what defines what tile you're actually working on. So southwest corner. Southwest corner. There you go. So that always defines what tile you're working on. If I wanted to, well, let me just kind of back up because I've covered this a little bit. If I do like this tile here near Houston, that is completely within the United States. So if I do that one, then if I go back to my settings, then this source for the DEM would work. The DEM, digital elevation model, that would work. If I do this one, that would work because that's completely within the United States. If I do this one, completely within the United States. But if I do this one, that is on the border of Mexico, so part of it's in the United States and part of it's in Mexico, not the United States, then I would want to come back here and I would want to pick that as the source. So I've learned that the hard way because I thought that some of these I was like, well, this is close enough, and I think I can make that work, and it didn't work. So as you can see, like a lot of these along the border of Mexico, I haven't done those yet because I need to switch it over to the one arc second. A lot of these up in it gets kind of fuzzy up in here when you get into that panhandle of Alaska and British Columbia. So like some of these are right on the border. So again, just be aware of that. If you pick the wrong source, what you'll end up with when you're flying in the simulator is you'll fly over, and once you get to that tile, it will sink down like to completely flat. So like for instance, I was flying over this area in Alaska, and I'm flying along in the mountains, and then all of a sudden I come around a corner, and all of the digital elevation model all goes to zero. So zero elevation. I'm like, oh, I got a wrong data source in there. And it made some of the tile right, but the rest of the tile didn't have any data there. So that's where to affect that change. All right, so let's go on back down here, and let's see. One other thing then, there's a couple of ways that you can build a tile. One is you can, let me go ahead and close this, and I can close this. Let's say I can build a tile right from here if I know what the latitude and the longitude is, and then what imagery source I want to use and what zoom level. I can do that, and I can hit all in one, and it'll do the whole thing there. Hey, Sparker's here. Hey, thanks for stopping by. We're doing a little ortho scenery brief. I've done this once before privately, and I just thought I'd do a stream with it and save it, and then that way if people could if they had questions, they could reference it. So I'm just marching through here trying to get to the end. So I could do the all-in-one here if I knew which tile I wanted to do. The other thing is if you don't know which tile you want, like, so for instance, let me pan down here. Like let's say I want to do this one right here that has Amarillo. So when I double clicked on that, it turned yellow, and you notice these values up here, 35 and 102, they changed. So if I click around, you can see these changing up here. Just kind of keep your eye up there, and as I click around, you can see those values change. So whatever's in those fields, that's the tile that it's going to do. So yes, that's the only thing that I don't think that it does is Ski Jeffrey, is I don't think that it does overlays, so you can deal with that. What's up?
You streaming?
I am.
Oh, then this question can wait, unless you just want to repeat yourself.
Hold on a second, guys. Got a quick question from my son. Hold on. All right. Thanks for your patience on that. My son had a question and boring stuff. All right. So back to the ski Jeffrey had a comment in the chat. He said last time I tried all in one, it didn't create an overlay, and I think you're correct on that. And so I'll point you to how I do this using this map screen. So for instance, if we wanted to build this tile right here by Amarillo, I could double click on that, and down here at the bottom, right in this area, it gives the shortcut. So button 2, B2 means button 2, or typically your right mouse button. Button 2, press plus hold moves the map. So if I right click out here and drag, it moves the map, and that's how to decipher this. Button 1, double click to select active. So if I left click, it selects the active. If I shift button 1, then I can add things to a batch build. Like if I wanted to do this area, I could shift button 1 click or shift left click on all of those. And if I click them again, it takes them away. That's what that means. And then control button 1 links the tile into the custom scenery. So let me show you that real quick as to what happens there. Let's deal with I don't know. Let's deal with this one right here. So this is 35 right up here, 35 and minus 99. So if we go over to my custom scenery folder inside X-Plane, and we're looking for 35 and 99. So it's right there. Okay, that's the shortcut. The actual file to that shortcut is actually not in my scenery production, but actually in Ortho for XP. So if I go down, or Ortho sceneries, Rob, if you leave your thing, leave that one field, this field empty, then it would go in your tiles folder. But as you can see on mine, it says 3599. What did I want? 3599. There it is right there. Okay. So that's the actual folder, and over here is the shortcut to it. If I go back here on my map and I hit Control button 1, this should disappear if I control click on this. Let's see if it makes me a liar. Let's refresh this. 35.99. 35.98. It's no longer there. Okay. Rob says, and I also so far don't have a shortcut been copied and pasted. Yeah, this is a real handy thing that that way you don't really get into like moving files and copying and pasting and stuff like that. You see the shortcut, it just took that shortcut out of there. And if I want to put the shortcut back in, then you can see that this tile went from dark green to a light green. That means that tile's been made, and that's sitting out here over the actual folder is sitting right here with all of the data in it. but there's no shortcut to that in my custom scenery folder. So if I want to add that back in, I just hold down the control, hit button 1. Based on this, hold down control, hit button 1, and it creates a shortcut link from this folder over into my custom scenery. So if I refresh that folder, we can cruise down here again and see 35.99. There it is. It's back, March 3rd, 8:48 p.m. So it just made it. Ta-da! So okay, Sparker says that's how I do it. Awesome. So Rob, this is super handy, and that way you don't have to be like back in your Explorer dragging things over and did I get everything or did it copy right, all of that stuff. You can just do all of your file management from right in here and control click on things, and then Ortho for XP will handle that. So let's do Amarillo, I guess. Does anybody know where the airport is in Amarillo? Let's look at that real quick just so I can give you an example. Let's go find Amarillo. This is that's Dallas, Wichita. Amarillo is probably right here. Aberdeen. I'm not gonna be able to find Amarillo. Kickapoo. It was this. Air Park. What's this here? Lubbock. Okay, there it is. So here's Amarillo, and Amarillo is in. Let's figure out what tile that's in. So here's the 35-degree latitude, and then we're looking for longitude. So right here is 103. So this would be the 102 right here on this dotted line, and then this would be the 101. So again, it would be 102 so that's this southeast corner right here, and Amarillo is inside that tile. So just for example's sake, let me fire this up, and we'll see what it looks like before, and we'll see what it looks like after. Yeah, southwest. Did I say southeast? Thank you. Southwest corner. It's always defined by the southwest corner. All right, I had VR turned on, so I'll turn that off, and let's do this and just get the Cessna and go to Amarillo International. Okay, KAMA, and we'll set it to be daytime so that we can see stuff, and clear weather, and go. So we'll load this up real quick and take a look at what we have here, and then we'll build the tile, and we'll put it in, and we'll see. We'll kind of just walk through a process. I knew that there was a correlation, but did not look that close. Yep, that is the correlation. So like when Melvin Leroy and I do custom scenery, and I can kind of show you this in detail too. Sparker, I was working on some Lua programming. You'd be proud of me. All right, so this is obviously default scenery, right? You got the patchwork of stuff down there, and the airport's sitting there, but all of these fields out here all look repeatable, and they all look we're definitely sitting in default scenery, right? Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and kill X-plane. And this is a bug that got recently introduced because the Oculus software was updated, and there's some hiccup, so the X-plane, if you're running VR, it doesn't exit properly. All right, so what do we want to do? We want to do 35 and 35 and 102. So right here is the corner of the tile. Amarillo is where we just loaded in, and we're clearly sitting in default scenery. So 35, 102. So let's go back here. Let's make sure we're on 35, 102, and you can see the data up here changing right here. This is where I'm on 35, 103 now. I can double click this tile. We're at 35, 102. And the other things that I just generally check, I just want to go in and make sure that my settings are all the same, are how I want them. This is definitely within the United States, so I'll go ahead and pick 1/3 arc second and hit apply, hit exit, and then I'm not going to do the all-in-one because I don't think that it does the overlays. But once I have that picked, I'm going to say assemble vector data, triangulate the mesh, draw the water mass, build the imagery, extract the overlays. I don't need to do read per tile config. What that's for is you can set up different configurations for each tile that you make. And generally I haven't run into a situation where I've had to do that yet. So I'm not gonna check the last one. So once I do that, all I need to do is hit batch build. And actually, I need to hold down shift and add that to the batch. So I'm just going to do one tile. Does it hurt if checked? The only way that I would think that it would hurt is if for some reason accidentally you had like configured something in a wrong way on a particular tile. That's the only way that I would think that it could possibly hurt. If I don't have it checked, then I know it's going to use these settings that I have set here. And again, always hit apply before you exit this. So I have this. Again, you want to make sure that I've shift clicked onto that tile that I want to build, 35102. Check these 5, and then I'd hit batch build. And then when I hit batch build, you can see on this screen that it's going out and starting to find the data. So that we'll let that kind of cook along here, and it'll take a few minutes. Rob says change that one folder to demo area. No more DFS overlay error. Yes. Okay. Excellent. Ski Jeffrey says it will generate an error, but it's meaningless message like no tile config found, but the tile gets built. Okay. So there you go. You've done something that I've done that I have not done. Steve PHL says I never draw water mask if I'm inland. It adds a lot of time. I guess it depends on the size of the lake, maybe. Salt Lake or okay, true. So if you're around big lakes or big bodies of water, then you may or may not need that draw the water masks. This setting right here. Great Lakes he does, and Sparker says I am by the Great Lakes. Sparker, you're going to want that checked then. All right, so this is cooking. This is going. You can see it's found a couple of airports: Rick Husband, Hutchinson County. Here's another one, Tradewin Airport, and a bunch of other things that don't have certain OSM data stuck in here. Now it's working on downloading the elevation data, and again, that's that 1/3 arc second stuff that it's getting from USGS. So that's just running in the background. We're gonna let that go for a minute. What that is doing is, again, we're making tile 35102. So I can go over here, and if I look in here and I go to OSM data, I can find 35102. It's probably in here. 35. No, I'm gonna need to go up one level here. 35102. So in this folder, this is where it's actually, you can see there's hardly nothing in here compared to like that one's got 4. This one only has one. So it's downloaded this airports.osm.bz2. That file is what's defining this list of stuff right here. And for those of you who have done the Bush League flights, and Steve, I know you know about this, but you can actually go into the OpenStreetMap data and edit it and manipulate like what Ortho 4XP sees and doesn't see in while it builds it. In fact, while that's working on it, let me just show you that real quick. There's a piece of software called Java OpenStreetMap something, JOSM. So you can go out and search for that, Java OpenStreetMap editor. And this is free software that you can get online. And then what I can do is I can open up any one of these airports.osm.bz2 files. So I can, again, these are all in my Ortho 4XP install. So again, my drive D, Ortho 4XP, this is where that's installed, and then an OSM data, and then I would navigate to like, so for instance, let's pick out what we just did. So that's in here. It's, what was that again? 30. Let's see, not that. 35102. So let's go find that. 35102. Here's the airports file. Let's go ahead and open that up. And this you can see, here's the data that it has collected from the OpenStreetMap stuff. So this is, if I zoom into here, here's Rick Husband International Airport. There's a couple of things that are critical here, and I don't know, Steve, you might have more information on this than I do, but I know the important pieces are the airport boundary. So this key right here, Aeroway Aerodrome, and then the other pieces of information that it pulls is the ICAO, so KAMA. That's where it gets this. This name here comes from the tag name. So that data right there, that's where Ortho 4XP gets that piece from. And then the other thing that that I know manipulates the terrain is the definition of the runways. So this line right here is the tag for that piece, that Ortho way. I call all these things ways. Is the key is aeroway and the value is runway. And that's probably a taxiway. But I know the airport boundary and the runway. Both of those things manipulate how Ortho 4XP actually creates the terrain. So in a lot of these backcountry airfields, yeah, Steve says, I also like to add a smoothing pix parameter in some cases to inform Ortho 4XP as to what degree to flatten a runway. Yeah, so Steve's exactly right. So on here, you can actually add in another key. And I forget the what is it? Is it just smoothing? I forget what the syntax is, but the value here has to be something. It's something like smoothing pix or something, and then you can put a value in. And what that is you can define the smoothing value. You can define this value per, I guess it's per runway, I guess. Is that right, Steve? So this 8 value here, you could say, I think it's per runway. I'm not sure. I know Steve had asked Oscar and for a little clarity on that, but you can actually go in and define, like if you have different airports on the same tile, so in 1 degree of latitude, 1 degree of longitude, and you want one runway to be a certain smoothness and another one to be a different one, you can go in and manipulate the OpenStreetMap data and set all of that up and then send it on its way. So Steve says he's still not clear on that. Oscar's been too busy. So I know he's had a question into Oscar about just some clarity on all of that. But that you do have the ability to go in and manipulate this data. And Melvin Leroy and I know Steve's done it before, a lot of the backcountry airfields that don't even exist. Like, so for instance, within this software, so this, let me just kind of jump back to where we were. This is going off, and it's downloading the ortho imagery and making textures out of it, and so we're going to let that run. But in the meantime, I can turn on Bing aerial imagery, and it's going to bring up Bing imagery on top of this, so we can kind of see where things are. But for example, let's say that back here in the hills, like right in here, somewhere we have an airport. Let's say like this is an airport right here, and it's not defined by OpenStreetMaps. Well, we can come in and say, okay, here's the boundary for, whoops, hit the wrong button. I'm going to pick this, and I'm going to add a tag to that, and I'm going to call it Aeroway Aerodrome. And so that will give those tags to that particular way. And then I can come in and I can say, this is the runway, like this. Escape. And then I can say, I can pick this, and I can say Aeroway Runway. And that defines that to be a runway. And then I can come back to this one, and I can call this, I can give this an ICAO code, ICAO, and I can call it, KWOW or something, right? And the name would then be name, we could call it WOW Airfield. And so if I were to go in and then save this, and click on File, Save, and I would save it on top of my OSM, back in on top of that same OSM data. And then if I recook this tile with this data, then it would flatten that out, make it smooth, make the terrain around there act a little bit more like an airport. And so that's the process that we do when we're doing backcountry airfields and things that aren't necessarily on the map, and they might not necessarily be in the data, in the OSM data. Like you can see, these are the ones that are here. Sorry, I just didn't do that. Hold on a second, Sparker. This is a Blue Sky Airfield. This one is something else. Buffalo Airport 1 Echo 7. Here's some, I don't know what this is. This is Randall. Let's turn on this. Okay, so here's an airstrip right here, but this doesn't have, it looks like it's in a junkyard, but I guess those are airports, those are hangars right there. But as you can see, this does not have any kind of boundary around it. It just has a little definition to say, here's an airport right here. But it doesn't have an airport boundary, and it doesn't have the definition of where the runway is. In Oklahoma, it's fairly flat, so it probably doesn't matter. But when you get into places like Idaho or Alaska or British Columbia or something where it's really, really hilly, you want the ability to go in there and be able to manipulate the terrain. So that's the process on how you would do that. Sparker says, where does the OSM data come from? So it gets downloaded by Ortho 4XP from the OpenStreetMap servers, and then it gets saved. On my system, the Ortho 4XP install is right here on my drive D, and here's all the folders, and then it gets saved inside this OSM data folder. And then in the appropriate, whatever the appropriate tile information, whatever coordinate you're on. And again, it's always the southwest corner of the tile that is the tile that you're manipulating. So that's the process. That's the process of going in and actually editing the OSM data. Another thing that I've done, and Steve, maybe you've done this too before. Some of the backcountry airfields a lot of times are tucked in along like a river or a creek. And so, for instance, let me show you that real quick. Since we're kind of still waiting, we're letting this tile still cook. But let's go back up here like to Idaho. Let's see, here's Salt Lake. That's Denver. Okay, so here's Boise, right? Here's Boise. And one of our first backcountry airfields that we did, or flights that we did, was we took off from Boise and we headed up into this way. And we stopped by Weatherby and Atlanta. And you'll see that the Middle Fork Boise River runs right along through here. Well, this particular river was not necessarily defined in the OpenStreetMap data. And as you can see, if we go into any one of these, there's one in here for airports. There's one in here for that defines the roads. There's a file here that defines the coastlines, and another file that defines the water for that particular tile. So what I did was I went in here and I loaded up the OSM data for this particular tile, and I traced in the Middle Fork River and Boise River, and that added like a water feature to that particular area. Another thing that we've done, those of you who know Melvin Leroy, him and I are a lot of times distracted by sandbars. And we did a flight from, here's Deer Creek. It was like Moose City or something like that. I thought it was right up here on the border. Let's see. Let me find the border. I don't know. It was on one of these. It was on one of these rivers that runs down here. And anyway, the river had tons and tons of sandbars, and the water mask that OpenStreetMaps had did not match like the picture of where the river went. So I guess the OSM data, had actually changed since they had updated it, or since that data had been written, and the river, I guess, over the course of time had changed where it went. So with that information, then you're actually able to go back in and edit this file in JOSM. In fact, let's open that up here real quick. Let's turn this off, and just so you can see it. We still waiting? Yeah, we're still waiting. Okay. So if I open this one up in Java OpenStreetMap Editor, there's all the water definitions for this tile, and there's tons of lakes and stuff. You can see. We can turn on imagery again so we can see where those are at. But so like for instance, here's a lake that's not defined. So even though the picture of the lake would show up on your ortho scenery, in X-plane this would not act like water. So you could land on it and you wouldn't go splash, or you couldn't land a float plane on it per se. So that's how you would do that. The lakes are pretty easy, but the rivers, the rivers are a little bit trickier. There's a process that you go through that's probably a little bit beyond the scope of this stream. But just if you're going to go in here and manipulate this stuff, just remember that as you make changes, then you have to be on this tile and hit save that one, and then you have to be on the airports one and save that one. That's the big. I don't know if there's any rivers around here. I'm kind of wandering around just looking for something. Not a lot of water in Oklahoma or Texas. Yeah, so you can see there's a lot of stuff that's missing. Here's all kinds of stuff that's missing, or maybe we're on the tile boundary. Yeah, so we are on the tile boundary. You can see down here at the bottom, gives you the lat and long. And so once you get out of the tile boundary, if I drew something down here and I cooked the tile that's up here, you'd never see it. So Melvin's guilty of doing that. I don't see any. Here's a bigger lake that's defined. Rivers are manipulating river data is a whole nother thing, and it took me a while to figure that out, but I did get that figured out. Sparker says, when X-Plane starting using OSM, I did not understand why, but with your explanation, it sure makes more sense. Yeah, it's I would agree. I did not understand it either, but it does make sense now. And the cool part about it is that, you know, with a little bit of knowledge, anybody can go in and edit it and make it, add to it or subtract it or revise it or whatever. And then with the whole OSM model, you know, and like the group, you know, everybody gets to edit it, everybody can save it. You know, it's kind of a group work thing. So anyway, that's how this works. Java OpenStreetMap editor is free software that you can go get and be able to manipulate that stuff. I'm going to go ahead and exit this because our scenery is done. It's just warning me that we've made changes to the airport OSM file, and I have not uploaded it and I have not saved it. Normally I don't upload anything because a lot of the stuff, you know, it's probably not the most recent stuff that it's gotten from the OpenStreetMap server. So the only thing that I would generally do here is just hit save, and then I would exit. But I'm not going to save it because I added an airport, you know, the WoW airport, and I don't want to deal with that. So the wiki of the geosphere, absolutely. Yep. Let us know when you do your riverbed stream. Okay. Jeffrey, send me, bug me about that in a week or so, and just to remind me, because it probably fell off my radar. So I'm just going to exit this. There goes that. Let's get rid of the browser. Our tile is now done. So it took 17 minutes and 9 seconds to do the whole thing. And it grabbed overlays. It built all the textures. I could scroll back up in here, but I wouldn't necessarily need to. So if I go back here to my maps, you can see that this tile still looks the same. So all I need to do is refresh my map. And it's like, oh, that now exists. So again, it's 35102. We can come over here and we can see that tile. And if I go my drive D, mine is set for ortho scenery. Again, that's based off of this folder here. If you don't have anything set there, it goes in the tiles for you, Rob. 35102. And we'll just scroll down here to find 35102. Right there. So there it is. It just made it March 3rd, 9:03 p.m. And there's all the info in it. So that we don't need to do anything with it. I just wanted to show you that indeed it made it. Now, the other thing that hasn't happened yet is there's not a shortcut in my custom scenery folder in X-Plane to this file. So what I would like to do then is I'll go back to my map application, and yeah, I generally build at 16 by default. It seems to be okay for me. I up-res the areas around the airports to make them a little bit sharper. But with the amount of stuff that I've done here, Sparker, I've done most of the United States. I think I've done Hawaii as well, British Columbia, and most of Alaska. There's parts of Alaska that I haven't done. I'm just under 3 terabytes at that amount of data. So that sort of gives you a ballpark maybe as to where you might be. Okay, so this means I've refreshed the map. You'll see it's in light green. That means that it's actually made the tile, but that tile is not linked into my X-Plane custom scenery folder. So again, the only other thing I need to do is I may need to make a link. So I hold down the control key and I click button 1 on my mouse, and it turns it dark green. And now what it's done is it's added a link to 35102. If I go in here to here, I should be able to scroll down and maybe find that. Let's see, 30. I might need to refresh this. 35102. There it is. Okay, so my symbolic link was just created by Ortho for XP. I didn't have to move or copy any folders. All I did was just control click on this tile, and now I'm good. So the next thing that I would do is, hey, let's go look at our scenery and let's start X-Plane. And what will happen is whenever you start X-Plane, one of the things that it does is it looks through your custom scenery folder and says, is anything new here? And if it is, then it adds it to the scenerypacks.ini folder, which is on my system. It's way down here at the bottom. It's this guy right here. And we'll take a look at that in just a second, because we will have to go back and sort of rearrange that to get this stuff to come out in the right order. So if we look outside now in X-Plane, you can see that, what do we have? I guess that's right. We got some weird stuff. That's default. That's not default, but that's ortho imagery sitting down there, and then we've got some weird stuff down here that's a different color, and that means that probably the higher zoom ratio around the airport uses a different data set of the pictures. Yeah, so Steve says zoom level disparity. That's probably what that is. So you could go back, you probably would want to recook this and maybe turn that off, or even adjust this manually. And that's what this button will do. It will let you manipulate those zoom levels for areas. But as you can see, let's go back down to our airplane here. Let's just come out a little bit. Let's look around. Hey, there's nothing out here. It's just pictures. And there's no buildings, there's no trees, there's nothing, right? So this would be a problem of like the overlays aren't there, or the scenery order, right now what's going on is this overlay, this ortho scenery is actually sitting on top of the overlay scenery. And so that's why there's nothing out here that we can see. So yeah, that is how I've been doing it manually. Rob says, will it work, or will I get errors? So it will duplicate stuff in X-Plane. Anytime you recook a tile, I don't know if this answers your question, Rob, but I'm sorry. If I already have stuff in X-Plane, custom scenery, and I get another larger drive and move my Ortho for XP to that drive, then create another binary shortcut, can I then create a shortcut, or will it duplicate it or cause other errors? No, you should be able to go in and get another hard drive, move all that data over, point this guy to where your where the tiles are actually stored. And then go into your maps and hit refresh, and then it'll find everything again for you. So I don't think you have to totally start over. I did the same thing because I started building Ortho with just one hard drive and quickly figured out that it was not going to, I was going to run out of room. And so I went through this process of moving things over and kind of ended up where I'm at. So hopefully, for you guys who are just kind of starting out with it, it'll save you a little bit of grief. But let's fix this problem. So that is if we go back down in here and we look at our scenerypacks.ini folder, and again, this thing controls like how the scenery stacks up on top of one another. So the stuff that's at the top of this list is higher in the scenery display order than stuff lower. Hopefully that makes sense. And you can see that this line right here got added during the last time. Okay, I just bought a 6 terabyte for the same reason. Yep, so you're on your way. This is the tile that we just built, so 35102. and you can see that that's at the top of the list, which is not correct. So I'm going to go ahead and quit Xplane, and then we'll manipulate this file. And I'm going to cut this out of here. So I'm going to Control X, and now that's gone. I'm going to delete that line, and I'm going to put this guy. You can see on my Scenery Packs INI folder, these are all custom airports that I've downloaded. Here's some Orbix stuff in here. Here's some Canada for X-Plane stuff. All of the custom stuff that I've done, and then it gets down into still more custom stuff. Then it gets down into some libraries. I've kind of moved my libraries down. The libraries really don't matter where they go, but I've kind of done this. And then I've got landmarks, and then after this, here's a Telluride that I bought. But here you can see where all of my Ortho stuff starts. So I'm going to put that line that we just made right there at the top of that. And there it is. So 35102 sits right there. And you'll notice that in my Scenery Packs INI folder, this line right here, the Y Ortho 4XP overlays link is above all of the Ortho. So again, that takes us back to the beginning of this picture. Again, we have the mesh or the Ortho imagery down here. Then we have the overlays on top of that, the green area, and then sitting on top of that is the custom scenery. So that's the order that you want to be reflected in this Scenery Packs INI. And you can see that indeed is reflected. This overlay line is above all of this Ortho stuff and all the other mesh data. So if I save this, overlays goes above global airports. Does it? Yeah, I don't have it that way. And the global airports, I think, is what that is that's like the runways and the hangars, taxiways, stuff like that, all of the default stuff. So I think that's the case. But the big deal is to pull this Ortho stuff and stick it down near the bottom. So again, I don't have anything up here. There's Roanoke from last night and some of the airfields that we just did. But all that Ortho stuff needs to be down below. So I would save that. I'm going to go ahead and close that. And if we launch Xplane one more time and go back and take a look, here's the question, is there any problem using a shortcut of the Y Ortho 4XP overlays? Not at all. There's no problem there. In fact, mine is a shortcut. Let me show you that real quick. Here's my shortcut right there. And that's a good point. That shortcut is something that I made manually. So I went in here. This is my drive D. I went into my Ortho 4XP. All the overlay data by default just goes into here, and it just keeps adding on. So as you add tiles, it just keeps adding to it. But this folder right here is what I made a shortcut of. So I did right click and I said create a shortcut, and then I took this file and I drug it into my custom scenery. So that's what I did. And then just make sure that the order in your Scenery Packs INI file is correct. So Xplane's loaded. Let's look at that now. And well, you can see right away I have an airport here. I have taxiways, and I have little forests out there a little bit, right? There they are. Our houses, autogen. I have roads sitting out here. I have wind turbines. That's an add-on scenery that I have. But all my stuff now is sitting out here. There's not much out here in Texas, but you get the idea. So now it's all working, and at this point we would be ready to fly. I'm not real crazy about this discoloration, so I'd go back and kind of play around with that and get that to be how I would want to do. Do the overlays go above the demo areas? I don't know. Just show you what I have. and I haven't had a whole lot of issues. So demo overlays go above the Seattle and Lowy demo areas. Here's the Seattle demo area, and my overlays are underneath it. Yeah, so Sparker has kind of a unique situation because he does a lot of development, and he has like some vanilla X-Plane installs that just is the basic thing, and so he has a bunch of like these shortcuts and stuff that that get in there. So shortcuts again are different than symbolic links. I can't go on with all the details about what those differences are, but I would in my experience, I would not manipulate these symbolic links that you have created and deleted or manipulated from Ortho for XP. This one down here of this shortcut that I made manually, this one, that's no problem. And that shows up as a shortcut. You can hit delete and away it goes. You can copy a new one in, that's fine. But you can see that these do not say shortcut, even though they have the little arrow on it. So it's a different kind of link. I think it's called a symbolic link. And I would not manipulate those manually. I would let Ortho for XP do that. You can set the overlays just above the Ortho if you'd like, Rob. Ski Jeffrey says so. Okay, I think that's sort of it. I think that's kind of the end. Hopefully that answered most of your questions. That's how you would build one tile. If you wanted to build a bunch of tiles, again, you would just add these as a batch. So I could hold down the shift key and say, I want to build this, this, this. I want to build all of these. And I could set this up, and when I first started, I would just set all of these up and make sure that I had my settings right. Over here, I would make sure that all my settings are how I wanted, and I'd hit apply and I'd hit exit, and then I'd load up a bunch of stuff and I'd hit batch build, and I'd go to bed and come back in the morning and then link them into the sim. And then I'd have in my Scenery Packs INI, I'd have a whole bunch of these sitting up at the top, and I'd grab them all, cut them, and stick them down at the bottom. And that would sort of be the process. So over a week or two, when I wasn't using the computer, I had most of the United States in Ortho, and away I went. So again, hopefully that helped answer a lot of the questions in just the process. And I'll go ahead and save this over to my YouTube channel just for reference if you guys want to come back and see it or refer to something else. So. Rob says, definitely helped downloading all those Seattle tiles that were in the demo with no problems. Had the wrong folder set up in Ortho settings. Okay, so hopefully you're on your way. If you need anything else or something weird comes up, shoot me a question in Discord or some of the places where I hang out. And I'm between all of the experts, between me and Steve and Melvin and whoever else knows how to do Sparker. Whoever else knows how to do Ortho, maybe somebody can point whoever needs help in the right direction. So, all right, you're welcome, and they'll say that I will. Yeah, ask away, Rob. I'll certainly help you where I can. So, all right, guys, that's it for me. Hopefully that helped, and get those computers cranking on Ortho. It definitely makes it a lot of fun. So, and you'll enjoy having. I don't hardly fly anywhere without the Ortho scenery anymore, and it's a completely different sim experience because you can look down and go, hey, there's that racetrack that I need to hang a right turn on to find Ayers Airfield, or you can look at the sectional and landmarks and things like that pop out that you can look down and actually see. So good stuff. All right. Thank you guys, and appreciate the chat, and hopefully that'll get you started. We'll see you later. Thanks. Bye.